All right. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Just getting some stuff set up here so we could talk about all the things. Apparently, there has been all kinds of news over the past week. So, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. As always, you can support the show by going to patreon.com/hemant. I appreciate that always. And if you want any of your questions answered during the breaks between stories, you could leave a super chat and we will get to it. Den, as always, is helping out moderate the comments. So leave them. We will get to them between stories as well. I'm sure you all have a lot to talk about also. And thanks for tuning in on a Thursday. It's not like anything else is on TV that's going to depress you completely. Um, the other thing I would say is if you have comments, we're trying a different lighting setup. So if you have any thoughts on that, leave them in the comments and then we'll pass those along to me as well. I guess I wasn't sure how to start this off because the last time I was on was before a attempted shooting. It was before JD Vance was picked. But the one thing I feel like I wanted to add to that conversation that I haven't seen talked about many other places, I wanted to talk about the Christian reaction to the shooting because it seems like over the past week, a number of Christian conspiracy theorists have looked to the Bible, as they always do, to explain why Donald Trump may have survived the assassination attempt against him, as if only God can explain why Trump turned his head like half a degree and saved his life or something like that, as if God is the explanation for why a bullet only grazed his ear instead of doing something far more lethal. And the way they've done this is by latching on to one particular Bible verse. And I wanted to show it to you here. This is Ephesians 6:11. And I just highlighted the NIV version of this, but check out what it says. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. So the people who are quoting this like to say Donald Trump put on the armor of God and he's fighting against the devil. And like, it's amazing how many Christians have cited this verse as justification for why his life was spared. I wanted to show you some examples of this. Check this out. I'm just going to show you a series of tweets and X's. I don't know what they're called anymore. He was shot at 6:11 p.m. Ephesians 6:11 reads the thing I just showed you. God spared Trump. No matter what your stance is politically, we all saw a miracle with our own eyes. God has big plans for him. Hashtag USA. First of all, anytime they say we all saw a miracle, keep in mind that the same gunman actually literally killed another guy, a Trump supporter, within seconds of the attempted shot at Trump. So, like, we all saw a miracle, which is that some other Trump supporter was murdered by an assassin, and two others are critically injured. Like, in what way is that a miracle? Just because your main character didn't die doesn't mean it's a miracle. That's like thanking a serial killer for taking a night off. No, you don't have to hand it to them. Stop it. But again, it's not just this one. Here's another one. This is from Truth Social. Um, Whoa, at 6:11, gunshots were heard. Take a look at Ephesians 6:11 and then the verse. Look at this picture. Look at it. There's Trump speaking. There is an angel made of armor standing behind him. Not touching his head, by the way. I'm not sure how that protects Trump, but there you go. Just a very burly, muscular man standing behind Trump with flowing blonde hair. You know they spent a lot of time painting this picture. But okay, again, there's Ephesians 6:11. Just to run through a couple more, this is more MAGA people just quoting the same verse. Here's another conspiracy theorist. The bullets were fired at 6:11. Ephesians 6:11. No even attempt to connect the dots, just putting it out there. This guy is a Florida like state lawmaker saying the exact same thing, But you get the picture. Everyone seems to be doing this. And this is from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. This is from a U.S. representative from Florida, Corey Mills. And check out what he said at a crowd of Wisconsin delegates on Wednesday. Go read Ephesians 6:11, the Florida Republican congressman said, and you will understand exactly why he has been saved and why we continue to move forward. I truly believe that what saved Donald Trump was divine intervention, the same divine intervention that murdered a retired firefighter who was using his body to apparently shield his kids from also dying. That's divine. That's God's good graces that murdered that guy. And one last one. They're actually selling apparel with that Bible verse on it because that's like a Trump thing now. So that's what's going on here. They're all promoting the exact same verse. And everyone's doing it. I'm going to show you a clip in a little bit of a Trump campaign spokeswoman who also cited this thing. But the thing that I don't get about this particular verse is that none of these people bothered to look anywhere else in the Bible. They found the verse that they liked and they just ran with it. And the thing is, I know it took place, they said at like 6:11 the shots were fired, but the thing is there was actually nothing telling them to go to Ephesians. They could have gone anywhere in the Bible. Why did they pick that verse? And so I was wondering, like, what are the other chapters that have, like, chapter 6 verse 11? What are the other books of the Bible that have the same numbers? Because I looked at those and guess what? They tell a very different story. Like, why didn't they go to the book of Genesis? You would think that's the first book of the Bible. That might be interesting, right? Guess what Genesis 6:11 says? Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. Like, that seems to explain why Trump might have gotten murdered. Like, why couldn't we cite this one? I mean, they purposely did not. Here's another one. This is from Ezra, the book of Ezra 6:11. Furthermore, I decree that if anyone defies this edict, a beam is to be pulled from their house and they are to be impaled on it. And for this crime, their house is to be made a pile of rubble. I assume it's God talking. Maybe it's not. But the point is, this is a very violent verse right there. How about Ezekiel 6:11? This is what God says. Strike your hands together and stamp your feet and cry out, alas, because of all the wicked and detestable practices of the people of Israel, for they will fall by the sword, famine, and plague. The evil Israelites that God really didn't like, they would be destroyed by a weapon. Feel like if something bad happened to Trump, they could have cited this one. I also like this one from Jeremiah. But I am full of the wrath of the Lord, and I cannot hold it in. Pour it out on the children in the street and on the young men gathered together. Both husband and wife will be caught in it, and the old, those weighed down with years. Whoever is full of the wrath of the Lord is just like, get rid of everybody. The Bible says let's just destroy all these innocent people who did absolutely nothing wrong. One last one. Proverbs 6:11. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Again, why did they choose Ephesians when there were so many more interesting verses they could have gone with, right? Like, no one reads the Bible. They just cherry pick whatever the hell they want and run with it. And none of them bothered to see, like, I wonder what the Bible says about, chapter 6, verse 11, anywhere else in the book. We found the part we like. We're all going to quote it. We're all going to cite it. We're all going to have the t-shirts that say it. And then we'll put the little ear bandage plastic thing, whatever, on their face because it's a cult. And they're all running with it. And then, get this, here's the funniest thing I read about all of this, because again, it's not a funny situation, but funniest thing I read about this, check this one out right here. This is an ABC News story from the day, or this was updated yesterday, but check this out. They learned some more about the shooter. Yeah. But look at this. The shooting happened at 6:12 p.m. Eastern time. It wasn't even 6/11. The official people the officials looking into this are like, yeah, it didn't happen at 6/11, it happened at 6/12, which obviously not a big deal. But if you're going to quote 6/11, I mean, get the timing right. So then I was like, well, what does Ephesians 6:12 say? Guess what it says? Let us read it together. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. I'm just saying, if someone got seriously injured at that rally and Trump was the victim, you could make an argument that this is what God wanted. I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm saying if you cherry pick Bible verses, you're going to end up with commentary like this. And by the way, as far as I could tell from what I've read from the reporting, it looked like the shooter, who was a registered Republican, wasn't even out to get Trump per se. His phone history suggests he was just out to cause destruction against any high ranking political leader, and Trump just happened to come to his town. But imagine for a second if it was Biden that this happened to, how many Christians would be citing some of these other verses to say, this is what God wanted. God was warning us this whole time. You allow abortion in the blue states, and this is what's going to happen. You know that's how this would play out. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. If you're looking to a sign from God to explain a tragedy, you will grasp at anything. Okay. And look, I don't begrudge people who are so desperate to find some kind of meaning in the wake of a tragedy. That is a very human thing to want to do. But at the very least, I think it's irresponsible for journalists to let Trump's campaign staff get away with saying this sort of stuff, because they are, without any kind of pushback. And by the way, like I said, this may have happened at 6/12, so maybe all of this is moot anyway. It's ridiculous. I didn't have much more I wanted to add to that. I wasn't going to talk about JD Vance specifically. I'm just riffing here. He is maybe more dangerous than Trump in many ways, and the main one is he believes everything Trump believes, whether he's sincere about it or not. But he's younger. He's slightly more charismatic in terms of sounding like a normal person. And he's like half of Trump's age. And that makes him dangerous because he's the sort of conservative Catholic who wants no exceptions for abortion, no rape, no incest exemption. He wants to ban it across the board. He wants to implement pretty much everything in Project 2025. In a way, I'm kind of glad Trump picked him because he provides no benefits to the ticket. He's just more Trump. They're not trying to win over new voters. They're just doubling down on their base, which that's the best case scenario for Democrats. I will say, as of this taping, Joe Biden is still the nominee. The polling doesn't look good for him. I kind of hope he steps. I do. I hope he steps down within the next few days. And I hope we get, whether it's Kamala Harris, whether it's an open convention where people can nominate someone else, I think that is the best path forward to give Democrats the best chance of keeping whatever they can keep, whether it's the White House, the House. I don't know about the Senate, but that might be the best path forward. But JD Vance being the vice presidential candidate is the best option if you're a Democrat, because he's horrible. I also found it interesting that his wife is Indian, like myself, and she's Hindu. And I am so curious what that conversation is like at home, because as far as I can tell, she worked for a relatively progressive law firm as for the past few years. I know she clerked for like John Roberts on the Supreme Court. She clerked for Brett Kavanaugh before he was on the Supreme Court. And she went to Yale Law School, which produces a lot of conservative judges and lawyers. But by and large, I mean, if you're coming from an immigrant family, if you're uh, working at a progressive law firm, I'm very curious, not what she said about JD Vance introducing him when he gave his speech. Well, you know what I would love to see? I would love to see the group chat by her relatives in their WhatsApp. Like, show me that. I want to know what her relatives were saying about her when she was trying to build up Trump and JD Vance and stuff. Because, like, there's got to be some cognitive dissonance going on there. And I kind of love the idea of having Republicans have to defend having a Hindu person on their ticket because that doesn't make them happy. They flipped out when a Sikh woman from California, a GOP leader, gave like an invocation prayer this week, and she's one of them. She loves Republicans, and they still got mad about that. They called it like a pagan prayer and stuff. So whatever, that's their problem. Let them deal with it. But anyway, I think I will stop there for now. I'm going to move on to other stories in a second, but I will gladly take questions right now, and we'll move on then. While Den pulls those up, I'm gonna move this up. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate the donation. You made a live stream. Congrats. And I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. This actually makes I assume you're talking about Trump. This actually makes him fit even more as the Antichrist because of the things the Bible says, the verses 6:11, all those things. I don't know what Revelation 13:14 says. Maybe Den can look it up, but thank you, Olivia, for that donation. Oh, because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. Well, there you go. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. Interesting. What other questions we got here? Don't use my own logic on me, MAGA, probably. No kidding. I'm so curious if Biden steps down and Harris is the presumptive nominee at that point. Whoa, let's close this door. And Harris is the presumptive nominee at this point. I'm very curious who she would choose as a running mate, mostly because there are so many good options. Like, I don't know if they would do an open convention or something, but like, there are so many good, powerful Democrats who don't have any of the problems that Biden does when he's speaking or anything, and are really good communicators. And I would love to see what they do if they can get in front of the cameras and get more attention on a wider scale. That would be really fun. I'm kind of curious what a Kamala Harris Gretchen Whitmer ticket would look like, but I don't know that I trust other Americans to vote for two women, even though I would like that. But there are so many good options. Like Jamie Raskin is sitting right there. He's great. I don't know. Anyway, what else we got? In all seriousness, for Trump, it's all performance art. He's a literal textbook narcissist. I know he was in my Psych 101 textbook in 2006. Fits the definition. And the amazing thing is he got the entire Republican Party, like he's taken it over. If there's one thing I saw in all the speeches I saw this week, they're not talking about ideas. They don't want people to know about their ideas because their ideas are like, let's just ban abortion in the blue states too. So they don't want to talk about those ideas, which means every speech you see is only about how amazing Trump is. Which again, everyone has their opinion on Trump already. Whose mind are you really changing at this point? I don't know. But it's kind of amazing to me. Like, it's not a joke to call that a cult. They're very much a one person, like a one guy thing. And guess what? If Trump wasn't here because of what happened last week, what do you think this convention would be like? Yeah, there would be different people at the top of the ticket, but it would be pretty much the same convention because the only thing they know is how to praise Trump as if everything he does is perfect. And people who actually understand the facts and follow politics, like, that's not actually what he did, how it works. He's not good at policy, but it's a personality cult, and it's scary. All right, thank you. Yes, subscribe to the newsletter, and you will get first dibs on everything that I write about. That's for free. And let me pull this up. I wanted to all right, we could take that down for a second. I wanted to play a video for you because this may be the genuinely funniest thing I saw all week. Because on the day after the shooting occurred, Kenneth Copeland, the very wealthy Christian televangelist, he was doing an already scheduled, I don't want to say rally, that sounds political, but he was doing a whole event where they whip the crowd into a frenzy and then tell them to donate money. And it was Kenneth Copeland and his daughter Terry, who does a lot of these with him, and Terry's husband George. And all three of them were on stage, and at one point they wanted to get the audience to pray for Trump. And the thing is, will it do anything? No, of course not. But I get where they're coming from. That seems like a pretty predictable thing for them to do. I'm going to play you a little bit of that prayer. because I just want you to see what they did, and I don't want to tell you anything more about it. But here is how they prayed for Donald Trump on Sunday night, the day after that occurred, okay?
We're going to pray right now over President Trump's ear.
Others that are critically looked at.
And the others as well. So let's start with him. Put your hand over your ear. Father, in the name of Jesus, we pray over Mr. Trump right now. And we thank you for an accelerated healing process. Lord, I thank you that Jesus healed an ear. Well, he can do it right now with President Trump. And there'll not be one sign, not one thing, Lord, that will even tell that he was shot at.
It's a cult. I mean, what the hell? They're literally holding their right ear as if that's going to make it better. I know some of you noticed that Kenneth Copeland on the left side over there on your screen was holding his left ear. Does that mean Trump gets hurt more? I'm not sure how the logic works on that. Kenneth Copeland also, when he was speaking right after that, he cited the story of a guy named Malchus, who is a Bible character, a servant, whose ear was cut off by one of Jesus's disciples as a way to like delay the arrest of Jesus. And Jesus supposedly sees that and he's like, "What the hell are you doing? Stop hurting this Malchus character." And then Jesus like did some voodoo magic and healed the ear. And that was supposedly the last miracle Jesus performed before he was crucified. So Kenneth Copeland spoke about that too, suggesting that he said, "Lord, I thank you that Jesus healed an ear. Well, he can do it right now with President Trump. And there will not be one sign, not one thing, Lord, that will even tell that he was shot at." Which is one thing for him to say that, but of course, over the past week, what did we see? We saw Trump with obviously a bandaged ear, which totally makes sense. But then you saw all the Republicans, or a bunch of Republicans in attendance at the convention, also wearing fake bandages on their ear, as if, I don't know what that's for. It's weird. It's a weird way to honor him. I've sometimes heard Republicans say that the 2020 election, there's no way the results were as they were, because the people who love Trump openly display it. And there's no way more people like Joe Biden, who won the popular vote, because like it's not like Biden supporters wear Biden shirts like with his face on it or go to rallies with Joe Biden. It's like, yeah, because we have jobs, because we're not part of a cult, because we don't worship the dude. We're just hoping to push the policies in a certain direction. But here, what'd you see at the RNC? Again, it's a personality cult. It's kind of incredible, like I said, to watch all these people mistake Trump's insanely good luck and moving his head at the right time for divine intervention. Because, again, there's another Trump fan who got murdered at that same rally, innocent guy. Kenneth Copeland also said that day that God helped deflect the bullet. As far as I can tell, there's no evidence the bullet was deflected. It's incredible to watch how they are talking about Trump and how they are praying for Trump without even bringing up Trump's own role in fomenting the political environment in which we now find ourselves, where he just raises the temperature everywhere he goes. Everyone, you're either with him or you are the enemy, and he riles up his entire base. Like, I'm recording this right now. I don't know if Trump has spoken yet. He's scheduled to speak at the RNC later tonight. But for all the talk about unity on the right, like, you know as well as I do that if not tonight, then within a few days, Trump is going to go right back to saying the worst things imaginable about the highest profile Democrats, because that's what he does. That's what his base does. I just wanted to show you that clip because I'm telling you, the idea of watching Christians just like, great. Now Trump's ear is healed. Maybe God could have prevented the bullet, maybe, from getting anywhere close there. How about that? No, God wanted the assassin to shoot and then kind of miss Trump and hit some innocent dude. That's the plan God had in store. It is wild to me that that is the actual narrative that Christians, conservative Christians, are spreading on the right. I'll pause there. What else we got here? Friends, fellow Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. I heard someone say, like, there is no way Trump's ear was injured like a Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, like chew it up, spit it out. Like, there's no piece of Trump's ear that will be separate from his body, because if there was, he would have sold it by now to the highest bidder, because he will cash in on anything. Just like he's already cashed in on shirts with his picture with the raised fist and all that stuff. Did they even mention the others injured? Yeah, in like as a side note. It's never part of the narrative that says this is divine intervention. They don't mention it in that sentence. They'll say Trump was saved. Hallelujah. God wanted it. God wanted Trump to be saved. God is looking out for Donald Trump. They'll say all of that. And then maybe in a separate part of the speech, they'll say, oh, and by the way, that other dude died for reasons. God wanted that too, apparently. Like, there's no logical consistency because it's religion. It's not meant to be logical. The ear bandage thing really does follow cult behavior. I thought it was just one dude acting silly the first time I saw it. And then the next time it was like a whole bunch of people and they were handing them out outside the RNC. And how messed up do you have to be to want to put that on? What is that a symbol of? Like, I know this is an old joke, but the idea that for a lot of Christians, they will wear the symbol of the cross, they'll wear the crucifix that Jesus supposedly died on. It's like, you're wearing a symbol of the thing he died on. Of all the ways to remember Jesus, that's a horrible way to remember him. And yet that's the symbol they're going with. And it's the same thing. Like, let's say you're Donald Trump. Sorry, but let's say you're him. Is that really the thing you want to see reminders of? Your near-death experience? Like, I'm sure Trump does, because they all look weird to be like him. But also, I don't know. I don't want to be reminded of the worst potential moment of my life. That seems like a bad idea. He had sneakers up for sale the next day. Only afterwards did Trump call the widow. Yeah, Joe Biden reached out to the widow of the guy who died. She didn't want to talk to him because she's a Republican, or she said my husband wouldn't have liked that. And only like a day or two later did Trump actually reach out. He could have reached out. Like, he was fine. He was back up and running. But he didn't call her. He didn't think about her until some campaign staffer was like, you got to make a phone call for 2 seconds. And yeah, I think he did. You're right. He did have sneakers up for sale, maybe with his image on it, selling for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Ridiculous. Like, do you remember back in the day when that's not how we treated politicians? It was better. Wasn't great, but it was better. All right. Yes, sign up for that. I want to move to a slightly different story, but in the wake of all this happening, during the Republican National Convention this week, obviously all of the Trump campaign staff, they're doing media interviews and whatnot. And there was a very interesting interview with Trump's deputy director of communications. So she, as a high level staffer on his campaign, her name is Carolyn Sunshine. Yes. And basically, a Fox host asked her, now that Trump has been shot, basically, what are you going to even do if you're a Democrat? Like, you can't be mean about it because then you're dicks. But, like, isn't this kind of like, no joke, no pun intended, a Trump card? Like, we have something. What is the left going to do about this? That was the question Fox posed to the Trump campaign staffer here. And I want you to hear her response, because then we'll talk about it. Because her response was not a response to this question about, what Democrats can do. Let me play. It's only about 30 seconds long.
People are praying for him. People have tapped into that. How does the left come against that? What are they going to do?
I think the left is godless, and I don't feel like it's harsh to say that. I actually don't say that from a place of malice. I say that as a place of just, as a woman of deep faith myself, I know how having God at the center of my own life, especially in moments like the one that we all just lived through, has an impact. And living without God, I just wouldn't wish it on anyone. But
so much unity. Isn't that what their whole campaign thing was about? It also didn't answer the question, right? The question is, how are Democrats going to respond in the wake of the attack? And let me ask the communications person, because maybe you have some insight about that. And instead, she just heard the word pray. Did someone say pray? Let me demonize the godless left. Like, first of all, the left didn't condemn anybody for praying for Donald Trump, if that's how they express grief. Prominent Democrats, anyway, across the board, as far as I could tell, they expressed nothing but well wishes for Trump. And I mean, hands down, they all said, like, look, I disagree with the guy, but obviously no one wants to see political violence, which is the right thing to say. They want Trump defeated at the ballot box, not through violence. So if the attempted assassination had succeeded, I also worry that had it worked, Americans would likely have to brace ourselves for a wave of political violence that benefits absolutely no one. And who knows, maybe we will be seeing that soon. I hope not. But that's what I worry about. But again, if the argument is, what did she say? She said, I think the left is godless. That was her response to what are they going to say about Trump. Let's try to give her the benefit of the doubt here. What was she trying to say? I think she was trying to say the left will have no sympathy for Trump. They can't feel bad for him because they have no morals. They have no ability, no emotions, no way to feel bad for someone they don't like, which obviously is not true at all. So it's not just that her claim that the left is godless is factually untrue. And it's not that she just used godless as a slur, which she definitely did. It's just a disingenuous thought. Because if you're looking for empathy, guess what? You're going to find it with the people who care for civil rights and minorities and LGBTQ people. You're not going to find it in the ones who are holding the mass deportation now signs, which is what Republicans are doing. And again, you can guess what Donald Trump would have said about Joe Biden had their places been switched there. It's also ridiculous to say the left is godless when Joe Biden is a devout Catholic who attends mass pretty much every week and cites his faith in pretty much every speech he gives. But this is how the Republican Party thinks. If you're not one of them, you are a monster. But I want to go back to this idea. Is the left godless? How atheistic is the left? You know what I mean? So I wanted to get some actual numbers here. Let me start with this one. This is a Gallup poll that was taken last year. And look at this. This is partisan identification as religious nuns. These are the people with no stated religious affiliation. And you could see the blue line at the top, that's Democrats or Democratic-leaning independents. The red are the Republicans or Republican-leaning independents. 33% of Democrats or people who are close to Democrats have no religious label. That's it. It's a third. And by the way, most of those 33% believe in some higher power. They're not atheists. So this idea that the left is godless, like, no, the majority of the left is not godless. And the vast majority of Democrats are not godless either, because even if they don't have a religious label, most of them still believe in God. So that's ridiculous to start out with. What about in Congress? Well, let me show you that, because in 2023, when the current Congress was sworn in, the Pew Research Center does a survey every year, and they're like, well, let's figure out their religion. And this is what they found. And I know this is hard to see, but look at this. Democrats, I don't know if you could see my mouse here, but look at the percentage of Christians who are elected Democrats. It's 76.4%. So 76, 3/4 of elected Democrats in the House and Senate are some version of Christian. And if I scroll down here, check this out too. If I scroll down, Jewish, that's 12% of Democrats. Buddhist, that's almost 1%. Muslim, that's 1%. Hindu, that's about 1%. And the point is, if you add all these up, we are talking more than 90% of elected Democrats at the federal level believe in God of some kind. So no, the left is not godless on that metric either. Okay, that doesn't make sense. The reason the right says the left is godless is because a lot of those Christians also happen to be progressive Christians to some extent. They don't want abortion banned. if it jeopardizes the life of the mother. They accept the existence of trans people. They support civil rights for gay people and minorities. Like, that's why they think the left is godless. Just absolutely, absolutely wrong. It's ridiculous. So then I was looking, what percentage of Democrats are actually godless? Or at least among the nuns. Let me show you this. Among the voters in the religious nuns, look at this right here that I want to show you. This is interesting. This breaks down the voting patterns of, right here, we have the religiously affiliated. You can see that's at like 65%. Agnostics, 69% of the agnostics voted. 70% of atheists voted. And 54% of the nuns voted. All that's to say, like, we're a sizable chunk of, like, the people who call themselves atheists are more likely to vote. We care about this stuff. And I wanted to show you two more things here. There's some other images just to give you some data. This is from Pew Research. This is from April of this year. But look at this. This is the religious demographics and how they support the parties. When it comes to all registered voters who are Protestants, 59% lean Republican, 38% lean Democrat. That makes sense. These are the evangelical Christians, Southern Baptists, and whatnot. About 60-40 split right there. Among Catholics, it's a little closer to 50-50. Let me scroll down here, though, to the unaffiliated. Look at this. Atheists, 84% of atheists support Democrats. And among all the nuns, it's 70%. But, like, atheists are a good demographic if you are a Democrat. You want to get that atheist vote because they're already on your side. And that raises one more question, which is, okay, fine, who cares if 99% of atheists support Democrats because there's way more evangelical Christians, right? That's not the case either. And this is an article from earlier this year. This is published on NPR. But look at this. When Americans are asked to check a box indicating their religious affiliation, 28% now say none. And according to this Pew Research poll, the nuns, 28%, are more prevalent than Catholics, 23%, or evangelical Protestants, 24%. Which is to say, non-religious Americans, we are just as sizable a demographic, literally, with raw numbers, if not higher, than Catholics and evangelicals at this point. So the Democrats are not a godless party. They are very much a party of faith. However, the way they need to appeal to their base is not by citing Jesus at every turn like Republicans do. It's by saying we want to support religious freedom and we want to support church-state separation and we want to do what the right policy move is, whether or not you, because of your faith, support it. I mean, Joe Biden, just to give one example, personally, I believe he has said he opposes abortion because he's Catholic. And Catholics are told you have to oppose abortion, even if they don't agree with it. But Joe Biden says he opposes abortion. And yet, policy-wise, he's been very supportive of pro-choice policies, which is exactly what you want from a Democratic president. So, again, this argument that the left is godless, absolutely not true. We're not even a majority none. We're not a majority unaffiliated. But if you are a Democrat, you should know that you're going to get a lot of support from religious nuns and religious minorities. So you should start acting like it. And think about that when you reach out to people. Like, America would be lucky if more people were godless, because that means you're probably better when it comes to science and technology. It probably means you support empathetic policies, like let's make sure people get justice in court because we have to settle these things here on earth, not in the afterlife. Let's make sure we are helping immigrants and the poor and refugees, and let's get a ceasefire in Gaza and all that. If you want to get those policies, guess what? That aligns with what pretty much all atheists believe as well. So, like, if only we were godless. Democrats are not, but just putting that out there. All right, I'm going to pause for that story. I'll move on to something totally different, but Happy to take questions. Christianity has become tainted. It's a religion that is built on the teachings of love, forgiveness, and mercy, yet advocates for the harshest and least merciful policies. What's that word? Hypocrisy. Honestly, I mean, you're right. It can be built on the teachings of love, forgiveness, and mercy. That's not what you see in practice. I know you know that. But yeah, it's kind of incredible that if you're looking for the most heartless things to do, how do we treat the people who are the least of these? As Jesus would say, the answer that white evangelicals have offered and conservative Christians have offered is, well, let's just be cruel to them. They don't care about the humanity. They don't care about kindness or decency. They want to hurt people. That's their policy moves. And it's amazing to me how many white evangelicals go along with it, how many pastors are so gutless as to not call that out. They're afraid of their own congregations. Like, imagine if they said, since they all play politics anyway, imagine if they said, I urge you not to vote for the Republican candidates because their policies do not reflect what Jesus would do. There would be a friggin' revolt in so many churches. So these pastors who know better are not doing that either. But I think it's worthwhile to keep calling that out at every turn, that what they say they care about, Jesus, the message of Jesus, the words of love, that does not come across in the policy decisions they support. Because what's all the anti-abortion stuff? That's violence against women. That is just adding misery to an already emotional time for so many people. That's cruelty. Like, they can't win with persuasion, so they're going to enforce it through laws, and their laws hurt people. And we see story upon story after that. I think the Biden campaign just this week released an ad featuring like an underage girl who was assaulted by her own father and had to get an abortion, and basically saying Republicans would rather make me suffer for the rest of my life. And it's a powerful ad, and more people ought to see it. I think they played that ad in Kentucky as well, because that's where that girl is from. And the Democrat won that race, the governor's race in Kentucky, when that ad played. There are only 2 or 3 atheists in Congress out of 535 people. It's actually one. It's one. Jared Huffman. I'm going to talk about him a little later, but Jared Huffman is the only openly humanist member of Congress. There's a handful who are unaffiliated, but they don't say they are atheists or non-religious. And there is a Congressional Free Thought Caucus that has like 24 members. But again, Huffman's the only one who is openly non-religious. And again, I just want to point out, just since you're asking about this, I don't care. I don't need anyone in Congress to be non-religious, but I need them to support separation of church and state. And I mean, if they all did that, that would be nice. Most of the Democrats do a really good job of that. Most of the Republicans do a horrible job because they don't believe in that. So there's only one atheist in Congress right now. I wish there were more, just because of the visibility. I've said this in some of the speeches I've given. I think having an atheist in Congress, open atheist in Congress, may be the best PR our movement could ever get. Because what is your job as a politician? Your job as a politician, in theory, is to help as many people as possible. We put you in a position of power so you can write laws and figure out where the money goes, tax money goes, to help as many people as possible. And to be able to say that because of your secular values, you want to use money to help the poor, the hungry, the least of these, that to me would do more for the atheist brand than having a celebrity who happens to say they don't believe in God or anything like that. So I wish I would see more atheists, openly atheistic politicians, but I don't need them. I just need them to do the right thing, even if they're not going to do the PR I wish they would. Click that like button. Thank you, Danger Aware Organization. I appreciate. Yes, click the likes. Support the channel. Okay, I'm going to pull up something insane. This takes up about half my tabs for this entire day. Give me one moment here to pull this up. Okay, I'm going to tell you a very disturbing story. Here is your trigger warning, because there are some very disturbing things I'm going to talk about. Some of this is going to be a rehash, because I may have talked about this like a year ago, but it's important to cover that story one more time and then tell you what happened over the past week, because it gets wild at that point. Okay. And the story I got to tell you involves a former president of the Southern Baptist Convention whose name is Johnny Hunt. I'm going to show you his picture here just so you could see. This is Johnny Hunt. He was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention between 2008, I believe, and 2010. So this is like the highest ranking Southern Baptist in the country for a couple of years, not that long ago. And in 2022, we started to see a series of newspaper articles basically doing to the Southern Baptist Convention what like the Boston Globe did to the Catholic Church with Spotlight, right? Like we learned that over the previous decade, more than 200 SBC staffers or volunteers had been charged with sex crimes against more than 700 victims. The Southern Baptist Convention then said, we're going to do an internal investigation. And what did they find? That it was so much worse. Their own investigation showed that there were 703 abusers, 409 of whom were SBC affiliated and not just random people working in their churches. And by the way, those names were on a private list that they did not share with other preachers. So that's disturbing. The situation got so bad that the Department of Justice, Biden's Department of Justice, said they are going to investigate multiple Southern Baptist Convention entities. Not individuals, but they were looking at systematically, like, what the hell's going on here? That investigation is still ongoing. And in May of this year, the first person was indicted in that ongoing investigation. And that guy has pleaded not guilty. But it's an ongoing investigation. But the reason I bring all that up is in that internal investigation that the SBC undertook, there was one story in this very lengthy report that implicated Johnny Hunt, their former president. And it was a very disturbing story, which I will now share with you, okay? This is page 149 out of 288, okay? Long report. But let's talk about this together here. I'm going to zoom in here. We were asked to examine allegations of abuse during the relevant time period. During the course of our investigation, a Southern Baptist pastor and his wife came forward to report that former SBC President Johnny Hunt had sexually assaulted the wife on July 25th, 2010. And if you look, he was president of the SBC 2008 to 2010. So that means he had just stepped down from being the president of the SBC, and then he allegedly sexually assaulted this woman. Okay. And so let's see what happened here. The husband, a pastor for 25 years, had a professional relationship with Dr. Hunt, whom he considered a mentor. They told us, the husband and wife, told us that prior to the assault, Dr. Hunt groomed the couple with flattery and promises of help in ministry. They also reported that Dr. Hunt gave an unusual amount of attention to the woman, the wife, the survivor, including making remarks about her appearance and comments of a sexual nature, and unwelcome touching, including kissing her hand. It's going to get worse. I'm going to scroll down here. They conducted multiple interviews with the couple who relayed the following information, because here's the story that the couple told the SBC investigators. At the June 2010 annual meeting, Dr. Hunt invited that couple to come spend some time with him and his family at Panama City Beach while he was on sabbatical for the month of July. And these people looked up to Dr. Hunt. He's much older. His daughter is closer in age to the wife at this point. Okay. The couple did take a short vacation to the beach, staying at a separate location, and spend some time with the Hunts. At one point, Dr. Hunt kissed the woman on the forehead, made inappropriate comments about her figure. Weird, not criminal, but not appropriate. Okay, let's keep going. It gets worse. After the trip, the pastor told Dr. Hunt that his wife wanted to return to the beach before school started to hear someone speak. He asked Dr. Hunt's advice on getting her a condo. Dr. Hunt gave her a phone number for a condo owner in his complex, yada, yada, yada. Basically, he tells the wife, you could stay here. And she had no idea that Johnny Hunt was right next door to her. He didn't tell her that. But it turns out now the wife is staying in a condo. and Johnny Hunt is in his own condo next door. Okay. On Saturday, July 24th, 2010, the pastor texted Dr. Hunt and asked him, "Keep an eye out on my wife." And Dr. Hunt said, "I will take care of her, and my family will keep an eye out on her." That's nice. They trusted him. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. This goes on for a while. Okay. We're going to scroll down here. Dr. Hunt texted her asking what condo she was in, as if he didn't know. She responded with the number, and he replied that it was right next door. Haha, surprise. And told her to step out on the balcony. Survivor was surprised that the condo her husband had rented was right next door to the Hunt's condo. Haha, funny husband. Dr. Hunt and the woman conversed from their respective balconies. He brought her a bottle of water. Survivor recalled Dr. Hunt shifting the conversation from ministry to flattery about her appearance, her clothing, and her perfume. Even though they're standing on different balconies, he apparently can smell her perfume. Dr. Hunt remarked, "He was hot from being in the sun." And the woman said, "Well, you can come sit in the shade on my balcony." And she described the balconies as side by side with no ability to cross, which means he has to go back out and come around the other side. She just assumed his wife and family were inside. Anyway, next thing you know, Dr. Hunt comes into her condo. They continue their conversation. Dr. Hunt asked her if she felt safe. Weird. And she said she did. She didn't know why he would ask such a question. He then told her to put her feet on his knee. He touched them while commenting on their beauty and size, as one does when you ask a strange woman to put your feet on top of you. Weird. At one point, he remarked that he was uncomfortable sitting outside because he didn't want to be seen, so he suggested they go inside. That's not a red flag at all. Dr. Hunt pointed to the bedroom. "Why don't we go in there?" And said that he guessed that they didn't need to go in there. She objected by emphatically saying no. In the living room, Dr. Hunt asked about ministry and church stuff, and then Dr. Hunt slid closer while Survivor was telling a story of the stress that she and her husband were under at the church. He asked her more personal questions about her life, like, "Have you ever done anything like this before? What is this?" And if she was wild growing up, which, by the way, in a conservative Christian context, what does that even mean? Still inappropriate. She was confused and not sure of what he meant. All right, disturbing part coming up. Dr. Hunt then moved towards Survivor and proceeded to pull her shorts down, turn her over, and stare at her bare backside. He made sexual remarks about her body and things he had imagined about her. During this time, Survivor felt frozen. Survivor said these were some of the longest moments of her life. She mustered the courage to ask him, could she turn back over? And Dr. Hunt said yes. When she turned back over, she began to pull up her shorts. Dr. Hunt then pinned her to the couch, got on top of her, and pulled up her shirt. He sexually assaulted her with his hands and mouth. Suddenly, Dr. Hunt stopped and then stood up. She pulled down her shirt. She said she didn't want him to ruin his ministry, at which point he responded he didn't want to ruin hers. But then he forced himself on her again by groping her, trying to pull her shirt down, and violently kissing her. She didn't reciprocate, but rather stood, eyes open, very stiff, hoping he would just stop and leave. And he finally stopped and left. Okay, I'm going to stop there. It's disturbing. But this is all in the Southern Baptist Convention's own report. This is what they said happened. And if you ask them, like, why did you even include this in the report? What they said is that we believe the woman and her husband when we talk to them, and we do not believe Johnny Hunt when he told us his version of this same story. That's why they included this in there. They went on to say in their report that that Hunt spoke to this woman like right after all that happened. And he said, quote, he would like to have sex with her 3 times a day. And then the next morning, he apologized. He begged for forgiveness. He asked for her to keep it a secret. And then after all that happened, allegedly, this is what was shared on a website about Baptist news. Let me show you this. This is from 2010. Look at the date on this. August 10th, 2010, shortly after that thing. Johnny Hunt and wife extend their leave of absence. Just look at the first paragraph here. Johnny Hunt, pastor of First Baptist Church in Woodstock, Georgia, and immediate past president of the Southern Baptist Convention, has extended his leave of absence from the church through mid-September, citing physical and emotional exhaustion. He's so tired, you guys. Can I just take a break for a little bit while I deal with some stuff? So he's just on a break from preaching and teaching and all that stuff. Guess what happened shortly after that? In 2023. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up for a second. All that stuff I just told you, that all happened in 2010, right? So after this guy goes on sabbatical, he comes back. He goes right back to preaching like nothing ever happened. And as far as the public knows, nothing happened. This guy took a break. He had a very busy, demanding job as president of the FBC for a couple of years. He needed a break. Let him have a break. And then he came right back to preaching. And he did that until 2022 when that internal investigation was made public. And people are like, they read that story I just read to you, and they're like, what the hell? We cannot have this man preaching. And then Johnny Hunt decided to basically sue. He sued the Southern Baptist Convention. I should say, he initially denied the allegations. Then he later said, no, you guys, it was all consensual. And then he said, I went through a religious restoration. I went through like Christian rehab and I'm all better. But it wasn't good. So he then filed a lawsuit against the Southern Baptist Convention. This is from Religion News Service. Is a pastor's sin a private matter? Johnny Hunt's lawsuit makes that claim. And basically, you could see after explaining this thing, without telling his congregation or the millions of Southern Baptists he had represented as their president, Hunt went through a secret restoration process that included counseling sessions with the woman he had fondled and her husband. He then returned to the pulpit, and for a dozen years, no one was the wiser. He retired in 2019, took on a role as the senior vice president for the Southern Baptist Convention's North American Mission Board, and just continued his busy and often lucrative career as a preacher and public speaker. Like, this guy's life just went on as if nothing had ever happened. Until in 2022, that report was made public, and it basically shut off the money pipeline for the guy. And then he sued the Southern Baptist Convention for defamation. How dare you say I committed adultery, he said. That encounter, according to him, I want to see if I could find the exact thing, but he basically accused the Southern Baptists of overstating what happened there. They made it look like he was a villain when, according to Johnny Hunt, everything was consensual. He said that his lawyers said that their encounter involved only kissing and some awkward fondling, unquote. So he's saying, infidelity, sure, but it wasn't assault. How dare you say I committed sexual assault? And plus, his lawyers argued, he wasn't even the Southern Baptist Convention president anymore. He was just a civilian at that point. So why did you include him in the report? And his lawyers said including him was nothing more than a, quote, strategic decision to deflect attention from the SBC's historical failure to take aggressive steps to respond to reports of child sex abuse and other sex crimes in its past. Which is a very weird thing to say, because if you're saying you only included him because you guys had a historical failure to deal with sex abuse, Hunt was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention when all the failures were occurring. You can't blame the SBC for not doing enough to stop guys like you. That's a weird argument for his lawyers to make. And also, I don't get the defamation argument, because this guy was a public figure. He was the immediate past president of the SBC. He was a hypocrite. He was part of the abuse that was swept under the rug. And there was no evidence that the allegations were made by people who knew they were false, but said it anyway, which is the whole idea of defamation. But it was also kind of, funny in a disturbing sort of way, that Johnny Hunt was trying to make his sex life private when his entire career was about taking everyone else's sex life and making it public. This is a guy who demonizes same-sex couples, monogamous same-sex couples, because, well, how dare they have sex with each other? He signed the 2017 Nashville Statement that said marriage could only be between a man and a woman, that all married couples had to be monogamous, and that trans people did not exist. He signed off on that, this guy, because, he's a good moral dude. He was all about, he preached about this, defending the sanctity of marriage. And this is what he was doing behind closed doors, allegedly. Okay. Okay. I'm bringing all that up. That's part one. So I wanted to tell you all that. I talked about that a long time ago because this is all old news. That report came out in 2022. He filed the lawsuit in 2023. And for the past year, this defamation lawsuit has just been going through the courts. It's a slow burn. Takes a while for anything to happen. But right now, earlier this month, the defendants, the Southern Baptist Convention's lawyers, basically told the judge, hey, we're not arguing about the facts anymore. Can you just rule on this? We want a summary judgment. We don't need a jury. Like, you know what's going on. We all agree what happened. Why don't you tell us if there was defamation or not? And so they're asking the judge for a ruling. And to that end, they basically made public a lot of the stuff they had been doing behind closed doors this month. And one of the things that came out was the deposition that the Southern Baptist Convention's lawyers took of Johnny Hunt this past April. Basically, they said, okay, we want to get you on the record for all the issues we are talking about here in this lawsuit. So sit with us for a long time, and we're going to ask you a lot of very personal, maybe invasive, but relevant questions. And we want to get your answers on the record. And he sat for this deposition. And until this week, the deposition had not been made public. And now it's public. And I want to share with you some of the stuff in here because it's bananas. Okay. So, for example, at one point in this deposition, a lawyer asked Hunt for his definition of adultery. And let me read you what this says. Let me see if I want to make sure you could read this. Here we go. Here's the top. Look at line 5 here. This is from the lawyer for the SBC to Johnny Hunt. How do you define adultery? He says, adultery is a man that is married and he has sexual intercourse with someone other than his wife. The lawyer says, so Bill Clinton, he did not commit adultery? Johnny Hunt, I don't know his story. Really? Really? I was a child at that time, and I know the Bill Clinton story. You were like a leader of a church. You definitely know the story. But it's a fair question because you're trying to argue that adultery is one thing, and we all know what Bill Clinton did. He didn't have like sexual intercourse per se, but he did infidelity. You could argue there was a power dynamic change there. You could argue that sexual assault. Like, by definition, Johnny Hunt is saying, well, I don't know if Bill Clinton committed adultery. Like, yeah, he did. That's kind of the whole thing here. That's a weird thing for him to say. But wait, it didn't stop there. It just keeps getting worse. Because the lawyers want to get Johnny Hunt to explain to them the difference between infidelity and adultery and all that. So here's another exchange they had. Let me jump to this page here. Okay, look at line 19. This is the lawyer. What do you consider being unfaithful to one spouse? Johnny Hunt. Well, to be unfaithful to me, in my heart, would have been to have gone to another lady's room, which he did. But that is not adultery. Okay, then when do you cross the line from being unfaithful to committing adultery? To which he says, when you have sex with her. And by sex, you mean intercourse. Intercourse, exactly. So you could be unfaithful by going to a woman, not your wife's room, and kiss her. And that's not adultery? That's not adultery. Is that what you have counseled people over the years who have come to you seeking marital help? The Bible would counsel that, and absolutely. You could see that the lawyers are like, dude, how are you parsing this? If you went to another woman's hotel room and you kissed her, that is definitely adultery. And he's like, no, it's not. No, and they're like, come on, is this what you tell couples that come to you? He's like, yes, that is absolutely what I tell them. Let me scroll down a little more to that exact same page. Look at this. Look at line 18. What's your view on emotional affairs? It would just be that a person had deep feelings for someone other than their spouse. Is that being unfaithful? It would be unfaithful, but not adultery. So your definition of adultery is limited to sexual intercourse with someone not your spouse. Yep. Other than that, the Bible used the word, and history will use the word fornication. I don't know how that helps him. It's just wild to watch him try to spin how everything he did was not adultery, even though it seems to fit, right? So the lawyers still could not figure it out. Like, because the problem with what he was saying is that he admitted he kissed another woman. And then they asked him about that, because isn't that infidelity, right? So this is what he said later on. Let me show you. I'm skipping around between like 300 pages. It's 368 pages, this deposition. And I read all of it because I hate myself. Line 5 from the lawyer. Well, you keep saying false allegations, but you did, in fact, kiss another man's wife, correct? I never kissed her lips in my life. My lips have never touched her lips, so help me God. Now I'm confused. Okay, good. Because your complaint very clearly says that the encounter with the woman, Jane Doe, involved kissing and awkwardly fondling. And what does he say? Because she said I kissed her forehead at a time earlier. She just didn't get the context with her husband there when they were both crying as I was offering counsel because things had fallen apart at their church. Like, you guys, Johnny Hunt was just helping them, and he kissed her on the forehead, as one does when you're helping a couple with their church. And she didn't get it because, woman. He goes on to say, she also said on one occasion, which I do not remember, that I kissed her hand. Like, what the hell, woman? And that was a real grooming moment, according to her testimony. But no, my lips have never touched her lips. And now the lawyer's like, dude, what the hell? I just want to be crystal clear that in her condo on July 10th, 2010, you did not kiss Jane Doe, because you totally said you did. He says, my hand raised to God, my lips have never touched her lips, ever. And you did not awkwardly fondle her? Okay, I did awkwardly fondle her because she was coming on to me. Dude is not helping his case at all. I have never been questioned before is the reason I'm so excited about being here today. I have never had an opportunity, and I will speak to all of you people and how that came about. All right, this goes on for a while. It is amazing how he's trying to get away from saying he did the wrong thing. At one point, the lawyers wanted to point out that the woman, the victim, the survivor in this situation, she is the age, roughly, of Johnny Hunt's own daughter. And isn't that kind of a weird detail, right? She's in her early 30s. And it led to this exchange, which, honestly, of all the things I just read to you, this is the one that made me cringe the hardest. You have a couple lawyers going back and forth here trying to figure out how to word this, but here you go. This is line 22. I think she's about your daughter's age, right? Uh-huh, says Johnny Hunt. And then the lawyers go back and forth for a while, but look at this. She's around 33, 34, yeah. Okay, so they're about the same age, regardless of what year. Yes, right. They are in the same age range. Yes, ma'am, says Johnny Hunt. And what do you think, says the lawyer, what do you think would cause a woman that much younger than you to have this attraction to you? And what does Johnny Hunt say? I wish you could tell me that since you're a lady. Ew. Ew. Dude, what the hell? Why do these women just find me so hot? I don't understand. I need to take a cold shower. Okay, so elsewhere in this deposition, I swear I'm almost done with this, but come on, how can you not read all of this? Elsewhere in the deposition, Johnny Hunt admitted that he fondled and kissed her breast for a couple of minutes, but that wasn't adultery. And he said he knew it was consensual, and they wanted to push back on that a little bit. So here is another part where they ask about that. Here we go. Line 7. So when you say you've never kissed her mouth, you have kissed other parts of her body? Yes. And after the breast fondling and the kissing, what was the next thing that happened? Okay, here's Johnny Hunt. Okay, and let's be real careful to say in this very consensual relationship, this is not a tense lady. This is a very welcoming lady. What was she doing to indicate that she was consenting to this sexual encounter? Enjoying it. How did she indicate that? By no resistance whatsoever. No frowns whatsoever. Was there any talk back and forth? I don't remember a conversation. She's a very quiet person. Did you find her attractive? She's an attractive lady, of course. Oh my God! Ah! Like, listen, you don't have to be a therapist or a psychologist or whatever to understand that enthusiastic consent, which is what you would want, is not a woman who puts up no resistance and has a blank stare on her face, right? Many victims of sexual violence will tell you that when they were attacked, they instinctively guessed that if they pushed back in any way, it would have made the situation worse. It would have led to something more violent. So they concluded that giving the attacker what he wanted was actually the safest course of action. And when that happens to Johnny Hunt, he treats that as consensual sex, when by his own description of it, it was not. If a woman wanted to be with him, she would not be doing the things he just described. So basically, in short, to summarize all this, Johnny Hunt says there was no adultery involved because he never had intercourse with his sexual assault victim. He fondled her, he touched her, he kissed her breasts, but he insists it was all consensual, even though she didn't say anything and she just lay there and she had a blank look on her face and she didn't push him off of her. Like, to call that assault does not feel like a stretch, much less defamation. But even putting aside the lawsuit for a second, to watch a former Southern Baptist leader insist that what he did wasn't adultery is to stretch the definition of that word beyond comprehension. And it makes you wonder how horrible his advice was to couples that came to him because they were having problems in their relationship. What did he tell the men? And what did he tell the women if they didn't enjoy whatever sex they were having in their relationship or lack thereof? What did he tell them? And remember, the only reason this story was even included in the SBC's report is because they believed the survivor and her husband, and they did not believe Johnny Hunt because they spoke to him too before they published it. And his argument is that by including him in that report, they made him a pariah. People would not pay to have him speak at their churches anymore, and they canceled him. And actually, this is an article from Baptist News Network describing the very deposition I'm reading because they said, really, you were canceled? You were canceled. Johnny Hunt. Check this out. The attorney then lists a series of 6 conferences and asks Hunt if he still speaks at those, to which he replies, yes. How many days would you estimate in 2023 you were booked or on the road for speaking engagements? Probably 24 Sundays of the year. And then the 3 conferences. There were actually 2 more. And this year alone, he's already done 5 men's conferences. That's this guy's definition of getting canceled. He goes out like every other week to do paid sermons. And he's like, you guys destroyed me. And I got one last bit of this deposition to show you, which is they asked him about what he preaches at all these events, because they're all like men's conferences, right? They're like, what do you preach to them about? And he says, like, sex and adultery and things like that. And so they asked him about this. How did you come up with the themes or topics you covered in those conferences? Johnny Hunt says, being a man. That's how he's an expert. He is a man, therefore he knows everything about manhood. And they're like, oh God, did you deal a lot with topics about lust? Yes. Temptation? Yes. Adultery? Yeah, it probably came up. Like, he doesn't want to say yes because that might mean he knows what adultery is. So he's like, maybe I talked about that one. Jesus, this guy is the absolute worst. So this lawsuit is ongoing. We'll see what happens. And again, I just want to point this out. The only reason I think it's worth talking about this, one, he is the former leader of the Southern Baptist Convention, and it just reveals their hypocrisy, their cruelty, the way they treat women, horrific stuff. That's one reason to talk about this. Another reason is that Johnny Hunt built his entire career, and the Southern Baptists have built their entire religion on the idea of sexual ethics. Like, that's a focal point in everything they do. They're anti-gay, they are anti-trans, and their whole thing is we got to protect the sanctity of marriage and the family. And those, damn liberals with their sexual lack of ethics and their polyamory and stuff, they're all horrible people. That's what they say over and over. And so the hypocrisy here is unbelievable because, one, if the allegations were true, this is downright criminal. But two, he used his religious authority to gain trust from people when he was being a total hypocrite. And it's important to remember, this guy has always pushed the false idea that being Christian makes you moral, that having Christian ethics makes you a better person. You're on the moral high road. But he's a living example of how Christianity is often just used as an excuse to cover up your own bad behavior. And he implies that people who reject his belief system are more likely to be sinners, worthy of condemnation, but he never took his belief seriously anyway. He acted like his marriage was worthy of praise, but monogamous gay couples, no, they're being led by the devil. And over the past couple of years, we have seen, Jerry Falwell Jr. get in trouble for the hypocrisy, the difference between what he said and what he and his wife were doing behind closed doors. Ted Haggard, famously a couple of decades ago, did the exact same thing. But to their credit, those two guys, they never sexually assaulted anybody. That's unique to Johnny Hunt. But Hunt seems so intent, I think, on making this story public. Like, very much Streisand effect here. He's going to make sure this stays in the public eye because of the dumb shit that he says. How's that for a story? I'm done with that one. I don't want to talk about that one anymore. It upsets me. What questions do we have? Wasn't Hunt the dude who said he'd let women who wore revealing clothing get off scot-free if they were sexually abused? I can't remember if that was Johnny Hunt or this other guy, Paige Patterson. I can't remember. But again, you wouldn't put it past them. Just bad dudes who you don't want making comments about women or sex or anything that should be taken seriously. They protect their pastors and they use scripture to make the congregation feel guilty for judging the guilty pastor. Yup. It's why they all overwhelmingly support Donald Trump despite everything awful that he does. It's not about, living up to their standards. It's about using the Bible to hurt their perceived enemies. It's why they like him. It's why they protect guys like Hunt. Yes. The Bible claims just thinking nasty thoughts of a woman equals adultery. Yeah, I mean, I forgot the verse, but yeah, if you have thoughts in your head, that counts as lust. Thinking of a woman who's not your wife is considered a sin. You're not supposed to do that much. That's why they tell people at abstinence only sex ed classes, why shouldn't you look at porn? Why shouldn't you read anything illicit? It's because it's going to make you have bad thoughts. And of course, if guys have those bad thoughts, they always blame the women around them for doing that. How dare you wear revealing clothing that shows your shoulders? You're making these boys lust after you. Is sodomy adulterous? Oh boy, now we're combining sins. I feel like monogamy within a same-sex relationship is a sin. So sodomy is definitely adulterous. Even if it's opposite sex sodomy, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. The thing is, what if it's sodomy with your wife? Because you would think God would be cool with that because it's within the context of marriage. But Christians feel really weird about that. So sodomy within the confines of a married couple, I'm sure they have a word for that too. That's not great. Does he still believe this shit? Johnny Hunt? I I mean, apparently he never believed in it, right? Based on everything we're reading. So I can't imagine he believes in it now. And as long as he's, but as long as he's still giving sermons and getting paid to do it, I'm sure he's going to tell everybody to live up to some standard. And if he doesn't do it himself, it's only because the devil tempted him. He fell short, but Jesus redeemed him. Can you see my eyes rolling? He simply wasn't judging, judge not yourself or something. Yeah. Let God judge me. I don't need to judge me. You don't need to judge me, lawyer. Jesus will take care of it. So let me do whatever the hell I want to a victim. Doesn't actually matter if he calls it adultery or not. The facts of his actions are the issue, not the word adultery. Yeah, and again, I just want to make clear, this is not like a criminal trial about what he did. I believe this is all about whether the Southern Baptists committed defamation by saying what he did was sexual assault or something, and he's mad that they said that. All right, turn on notifications. Yep, you can get the newsletter for free right there. I'm gonna move to a happier story for a second, just so I don't have to talk about this one anymore for a moment. I'm gonna give you an update that I think you're gonna like as soon as I get rid of these deposition tabs. Okay. Give me a moment here to change course. Okay. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week because I was gone, but I talked about Christian nationalist Ryan Walters. He is the Oklahoma Superintendent of Public Instruction. That's this guy right here. And he spoke at a board, like a state board of education meeting, and he basically announced to the board of education that he was going to force teachers across the state to use the Bible in their classrooms. Okay. He said the Bible is a necessary historical document to teach our kids about the history of this country. And so he said every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom. And that's disturbing for all the reasons. I made another video about it. I'm not going to remake that entire video, but that is what he said at the Board of Education meeting. And then he released a memo. He sent it out to every superintendent in the state that reiterated all that. It didn't say every teacher, but it said like all the core classes. But it said, why are we doing this? Because the Bible has substantial influence on our nation's founders and the foundational principles of our Constitution. And then it said in print at the very bottom, adherence to this mandate is compulsory, immediate, and strict compliance is expected, which is a very scary thing to get if you're a superintendent of a school district, right? It was very disturbing. And part of it was, I mean, this isn't funny, but one of the reactions to that memo and what he said came from Oklahoma's own attorney general, who is a Republican in a very red state, but has somehow actually been not the worst when it comes to church-state separation. And when Ryan Walters said all that, the attorney general of the state of Oklahoma came out and said, the Bible's already legal in the classrooms. Like if a teacher wanted to use it to compare and contrast like the book of Genesis to Gilgamesh or something, like you can already do that. If a history teacher wanted to cite the Bible to make a point about, they already have the right to do that. So like it was kind of a low-key way of saying you don't have to listen to the memo because it's already legal to use the Bible if you want to. But the attorney general did not say everyone has to use it. And church-state separation groups all issued press releases saying this is horrible, but no one's filed a lawsuit yet because there's an open question about how seriously anyone should take his memo. And this is not a law. Also, it's the summer. School hasn't started yet. So no one's filed a lawsuit over this yet because there's nothing to sue over. So with that in mind, that is what we talked about last time. I read an article this week that was surprising in the best possible way because the news outlet, I'm trying to find the statement here. A news outlet by the name of the Norman Transcript, the Norman, Oklahoma Transcript, they spoke with Nick Migliorino. I'm going to call him Nick. He's the superintendent of the Norman Public Schools. And basically, the newspaper reporter asked the superintendent of one of the largest school districts in the state of Oklahoma, hey, are you all going to use the Bible in the classroom? And I want to show you what the superintendent said, because it was a wonderful response. Look at this. Migliorino said that won't happen in his district's classrooms. I'm just going to cut to the chase on that. Norman Public Schools is not going to have our Bibles in our classrooms, and we're not going to require our teachers to teach from the Bible, he said. The standards are clear, and our curriculum is very clear, and we are not going to deviate from that. I don't know. I'm just going to be direct on that one. And then he went on to say later on, we're going to follow the law. We're going to provide a great opportunity for our students. We're going to do right by our students and right by our teachers, and we're not going to have Bibles in our classrooms. Which is an incredible thing for a superintendent to say. And I'm not sure why he said it now. And like, school hasn't started yet. You're going to see a lot more statements like that, I hope, in the coming weeks. But as far as I could tell, that was the first superintendent who explicitly said, yeah, we're not listening to Ryan Walters about this. Like, consequences be damned, we're not doing it, which is fantastic. And so then a different reporter reached out to Ryan Walters' office basically to say, hey, the superintendent said they're not going to listen to you. What do you have to say about that? And here's the response from Ryan Walters' office. Oh, yes, they will, is all the spokesperson told the reporter. It's the most infantilizing statement I could think of. Like, they're literally sticking their fingers in the ear like, no, 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 no. I can't do that. Oh, yes, they will. That's the best Ryan Walters came up with right there. By the way, there are plenty of other news outlets that have reported on this. They fact check what Oklahoma law says about teaching the Bible in schools. Here, I'll save you some time. The law says you can't do it. You can't force kids to read the Bible. They have the ability to if they want to, but you can't force teachers to teach from it. You can't force students to read it against their will, at least in a religious sense. It's not a homework assignment or something like that. So everyone is saying we don't know what the hell's going on because it seems like Ryan Walters has no authority. It doesn't seem like he can do the things he is doing. And for now, though, Ryan Walters is just sticking to it. He isn't saying anything else. We're going to find out. This is all going to come to a head within the next few weeks as school gets started up again. And they're going to have a fight about this. And Ryan Walters wants to have this fight. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to make a prediction now. You can rub it in my face if it doesn't come through. If Donald Trump wins the election, Ryan Walters wants to be the next Betsy DeVos. He wants to be Secretary of Education. And the way to get in Trump's good graces is by doing the craziest Christian nationalist shit imaginable. And that's why he's doing all this, because he is like the highest profile guy involved in education right now. It's either him or all the pro-voucher Republicans who are bankrupting their states and destroying their public schools. So Ryan Walters looks real good right now to the MAGA cultists. If Trump does not win the election, if Biden steps down and someone else gets in his place, if Trump does not win, I have a feeling Ryan Walters will tone it down because there's nowhere else for him to go. I don't know if that's going to happen. I hope that's what happens, but that's where I think this will go. So anyway, I appreciated that one superintendent spoke out. I hope a lot more follow suit. I'll be curious to see what happens. I'll stop there before I get to the next thing. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Ryan Walters is a not nice being whose politics lead to the self-unliving of a non-binary student. Yeah, I get that. Next, Benedict. Yeah, I mean, the anti-trans Republicans have made life hell for non-binary students, for trans students, basically for anyone who doesn't fit whatever mold conservative Christians want to put them in. I mean, I would also say he's also just not a nice person in general, which is so weird. There are articles, you can find this online. There are articles about what Ryan Walters was like before he got this job, before he got involved in Oklahoma education. And as far as I could tell, the students he used to teach, they liked him. And the students he used to coach, I think he was a tennis coach, they really liked him. And if you ask them now, so what's up with Ryan Walters? They're all like, we don't know what happened to that guy. Like, that is not the guy who worked with us. It's kind of the same comments you're hearing about JD Vance now. Because like 5 years ago, everyone who knew JD Vance, including, by the way, a trans person who said he gave her a gift after she had top surgery, they all really liked the guy. They were charmed by him. And if you ask them now, hey, you know JD Vance, what's he like? They're all like, who is this guy? He's not the same guy. And I don't know if his beliefs changed or he just recalculated all his positions for the sake of political ambition. But there are these people who will just say and do whatever, no matter how cruel it is, just to get higher in Republican politics because they reward that sort of thing. It's sad. It's sad that that's what's driving them. Like, because you can fantasize in your minds just like I can. What would you do if you had a certain amount of power? And I don't know. I cannot imagine for the life of me. I would say, let me think about how I can hurt as many people as possible. Like, I don't know. That would never cross my mind. And yet that seems to be the driving force for some of these people. Man, I'm really not caring for that guy. Now he's investigating a teacher after the libs on TikTok person called out a comment she made about Trump after the rally. Yeah, I think the libs of TikTok person started screenshotting every single liberal who was like, damn it, the bullet missed. And just to make sure they are fired or canned or whatever. And I would not be surprised if Ryan Walters is investigating a teacher. That said, I also think it's stupid for people to wish death on anybody, especially on social media. Like, come on, it's been long enough. You know better than to do that sort of shit. So they want teachers coerced to use the Bible, not using it for what they deem the right reasons, what they deem are the right reasons. Same side that argues humanity gave humanity free will. I'm sorry, I'm not reading that correctly, but yeah, they want teachers to use the Bible. And this is a question I raised like last week or weeks earlier, which is, what if a teacher uses the Bible, but like, I'm a science teacher. Let's read the book of Genesis because this is bullshit. If they did that, they are using the Bible. Is Ryan Walters okay with that? And I still have not heard him give a good answer to that question yet. I'm curious for how they want teachers to use the Bible because they haven't released any curriculum yet or anything. Yeah, if the class is learning about the Divine Comedy or Paradise Lost, yes, then a Bible would be very useful for understanding those works. I totally agree. I don't know how many high schoolers are reading those two works, but you're right. Like, there are legit places where you might want to compare and contrast what the origin stories of different belief systems are. Or if you want to understand references made in the Divine Comedy or Paradise Lost, or you're reading something else by Dante or Milton, yeah, it would be helpful to know what the Bible says. And guess what? A lot of kids, especially those not raised in Christianity, they may not be familiar with that stuff. I am so on board with everybody having a good cultural working knowledge of the main characters of the Bible and the main stories of the Bible, because you got to know it to make sense of these other works. And a lot of kids don't have that. And I don't agree with that, but that's not what Ryan Walters is talking about. Teach kids how to think, not what to think. Yeah, sorry, you're a liberal scum. How dare you teach kids how to think? That's critical thinking, and that hurts Republicans' fifis. Yeah, like and subscribe. I appreciate that. I have two more quick stories, and I think I'll call it a night here. Let me pull this up really quick so I can share this with you all. This is interesting. There is a Bible story involving a town named Ziklag. And I'll show you a picture in just a second, but Ziklag. And it is where the character David of David and Goliath fame lives for a while he's being persecuted. It's like his safe space. It's the place from which David can plan counterattacks. And that town's name, Ziklag, is now being used by a lot of really rich Christian zealots who want to basically take over the world. This is an article from ProPublica where they said, inside Ziklag, the secret organization of wealthy Christians trying to sway the election and change the country. And what this very disturbing article boiled down to is that a lot of wealthy Christians have given a lot of money to this project that basically helps Republicans mobilize their base before the election and kicks Democrats off the voter rolls in swing states. That's where the money is going, all in the name of Jesus. Like, they're not just trying to get out the vote, they're trying to actively suppress the votes of their opponents. And the people who are paying for this to happen have like an unlimited pool of money to spend toward these efforts. Okay. They're trying to become the Christian nationalist version of the Koch brothers. And with that kind of cash, there's no telling how influential they could be. So let me show you a couple excerpts from this article, because what ProPublica's reporters were able to find were documents, internal documents that kind of laid out what they want to do. We are in a spiritual battle and locked in a terrible conflict with the powers of darkness, says a strategy document that lays out Ziklag's 30-year vision to redirect the trajectory of American culture toward Christ by bringing back biblical structure, order, and truth to our nation. Like, holy shit, that's their mission statement? That is horrifying. And the donors behind this effort, they said they have about 125 donors so far, which doesn't seem like a lot. But if you're a new member, you're supposed to have at least $25 million sitting in your bank account. Doesn't mean all of it's going to Ziklag, but it means you have that sort of money to spend. And that's disturbing, right? I'll show you another excerpt here. Here we go. These previously unreported plans are the works of a group named Ziklag, a little-known charity whose donors have included some of the wealthiest conservative Christian families in the nation, including the billionaire, I don't know how to pronounce it, Ulian family, who made a fortune in office supplies. That family, by the way, gives a lot of money to Republicans in Illinois, where I'm from. The Greens, who run Hobby Lobby and the Museum of the Bible and all that. And the Wallers, who own the Jockey Apparel Corporation. Recipients, so Ziklag takes in all this money. What do they do with it? Well, they hand it out to the groups that are doing the work they want. Recipients of Ziklag's largesse include Alliance Defending Freedom, the Christian hate group. It's the Christian legal group that led to the overturning of Roe v. Wade, plus the national pro-Trump group Turning Point USA, that's Charlie Kirk's group, and a constellation of right-of-center advocacy groups. So basically, Ziklag is taking money from wealthy Christians and giving it out to right-wing hate groups that already have so much money. They don't need more. I'm going to mess this up, but I read this months ago, and it stayed with me ever since. Like, left-wing media is just a handful of people who give each other like $5 at a time to pay for subscriptions. Right-wing media is just an infinite pool of money pouring in to spread whatever propaganda you want. Like, that's the game we are currently in. The people who want you to get misinformation have so much money, they never have a paywall, and they just want you to spread their BS. And the actual good reporters who have thoughtful articles and do the homework, they are begging for subscribers everywhere they go. It's so frustrating. So kudos to ProPublica for pointing this out. Like right now they have assets of $12 million, Ziklag does, and that's a drop in the bucket, I know. But it's the potential of what they could do that's more disturbing, because their goal is to further the conservative Christian cause by giving money out to all these groups. This was also interesting in the piece. ProPublica and Documented, which worked on this together, they presented the findings of their investigation to 6 nonpartisan lawyers and legal experts. All expressed concern that Ziklag was testing or violating the law. It casts serious doubt on this organization's status as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I think it's across the line without a question, said another professor. So they're acting like they're a nonprofit, and by that they mean like they support a cause but not candidates, and they very clearly are supporting candidates here by doing whatever it is they're doing. So that's disturbing. I think there's only one other thing I want to share with you about this organization right now. I should say this tactic of supporting candidates, that's not new. I've talked about this before. Many pastors actively endorse candidates from the pulpit, practically begging the IRS to come after them and revoke their tax-exempt status, and the IRS hasn't done a damn thing about it. So in this case, the ability of being tax-exempt, I mean, maybe it doesn't mean much to the billionaires who are funding them, but the loss of anonymity of being a real nonprofit, that could be a bad thing if they had to give that up. So what's the goal? What are they trying to accomplish, this organization, Ziklag? Well, their own documents say they want to take dominion over the 7 mountains. And if you are not familiar with the 7 mountain mandate, you should get really familiar with that, because the 7 mountain mandate basically refers to Christians taking over religion, family, education, entertainment, media, government, and business. They want to take over every aspect in order to influence every aspect of our lives. I mean, when it comes to education, what would that mean? That means destroying the public school system by pushing for private school vouchers and homeschooling and making sure taxpayer money funds private Christian schools. That's what I mean by taking over that mountain. Um, in case you're wondering, because I was, how did they take over entertainment? Because they suck at entertainment. And one of the things they reported in this piece is that they want to make sure 80% of all movies are rated G or PG. Like they have to be family friendly, which feels like a goal that is out of their control. Like I have no problem with family friendly movies, but also I don't want to watch those movies. They're boring. I want to watch actual thoughtful movies made for adults. And they're saying, like, yeah, we're going to put a stop to a lot of those. I don't know how they do that, but that is definitely one of their goals. Also, I'm assuming one of their goals is like Kirk Cameron and Kevin Sorbo have to star in every movie, and that's just part of the plan. I don't know how they're going to accomplish that, but that is the thing. Okay, seriously, last thing I wanted to point out, that this is interesting. How are they going to do the voter suppression? How are they going to purge Democrats off the voter rolls? Well, this is in the article as well. Check this out. According to an internal video, Ziklag plans to invest $800,000 in Eagle AI's Clean the Rolls project, which would be one of the largest known donations to the group. So basically, they're using AI software to identify which voters they shouldn't be on the rolls. We need to get rid of them. Maybe they haven't voted in a while or something, and they want to get them off the list so that they can't vote if they just so happen to feel inspired this time around. Well, guess what? NBC News ran an article just this week, separately from that ProPublica piece, but check this out. Eagle AI, a database founded by a retired physician, pairs large swaths of public data with voter rolls and allows activists to peruse the data in search of outdated or inaccurate voter registrations. Activists then bring their findings to elected officials or, in states where it's permitted, formally challenge voters' eligibility themselves. Oh, but look at this. In recordings of calls among members of 2 prominent election integrity groups this spring and summer obtained by NBC News, some conservative activists are finding major problems with the programs. North Carolina database is completely non-functional. I love this for them. They're investing all this money into crappy software that doesn't even do the voter suppression that they want. Glorious. I love that Christian millionaires are going to be wasting their money on this stuff. How good is that? I mean, they'll find something else to waste their money on. It won't be good, but a little bit of a silver lining to all of this. I think if nothing else, you should just be aware of that name, Ziklag, and be on the lookout, because this is a way to get a lot of Christian money into Republican projects, right? And I just want to also just say, think about where these wealthy Christians are spending their money. They're not using it to help the poor or feed the hungry or even inspire people to become Christians through their good works. Nope, they don't give a shit about any of that. They just want to force their will upon the entire country, and they will use their money and power to do it. I'll stop there. Oh, what other questions we got? And then I got one last story for you. Help stop the spread of misinformation. Yes, I'm the only true source of information. No, I'm one of many, but you can like the stream, hit the subscribe button, costs you nothing. It does help. I appreciate, Elizabeth, that you said this helps get Friendly Atheist and team. Like for these live streams, I have a team of Den, and he's awesome, but I have a team of 1. And outside of Den, my team is me and the people at Panera. But I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Anything else? All right. I got one last one for all of you, and it's a sad, disturbing story. Of course it is. I had to leave you on a sad note. Let me share this with you because this is an interesting statement. Last week, a church in Kentucky called Lex City Church, Lexington City Church. Lex City Church shut down. They said we're not going to have services anymore, and they posted this on Facebook. I just checked today, by the way. They shut down their entire page already, so I'm glad I got a screenshot. But look at the top of this. Church family, today we're writing a letter that no leadership team desires to write. Through thoughtful prayer and heartfelt tears, the leadership team of Lexington City Church has voted to permanently cease our ministry. Due to the continued effects of the financial situation our church inherited several years ago, and the impact of the ongoing investigation of a former staff member, we have lost the ability to remain financially viable and fulfill our God-given mission. So sad. But wait, sorry, go back for a second. The impact of an ongoing investigation of a former staff member? Tell me more about that. Because notice they don't really go into details. They just say, something happened with a former staffer. It's hurting us. We got to shut down. And the thing is, if you search for this former staff member and what this staff member supposedly did, oh no, it's really, really bad. Let me show you the website from the Kentucky Attorney General's office. This is what the Kentucky Attorney General said. Attorney General Coleman announces arrest of a former Lexington pastor for rape and sexual abuse of a minor. And they cite the arrest of Zachary King, 47, former executive pastor of Lex City Church, for rape and sexual abuse of a minor, as well as the unlawful use of electronics to engage in sexual acts with a minor. Basically, they're saying this guy sexually assaulted a child, and they were exchanging pictures with each other. I had to find an actual news article to find out how disturbing this was. And these are just the charges, not the specifics. But this is from a local news outlet. Zachary King, 47, is facing charges of first-degree rape, third-degree rape, first-degree sodomy, third-degree sodomy, first-degree sexual abuse, and procuring or promoting the use of a minor by electronic means, according to court records. Like, holy crap, this is extremely, extremely serious. Another news article about this situation is put it in layman's terms, but basically King consented to an interview with the detective. This is after he was arrested, and admitted to having sex. It's assault, not sex. I don't know why they call it that. Admitted to having sex with a 15-year-old minor beginning in January of 2023 and lasting until April of 2024. That's like 15 months. The sexual encounters, still, why are they calling it that? It's assault. Happened at his home, the minor's home, and at the former pastor's church. Oh my God. So, here's what I will say about Lex City Church. There is no evidence that anyone at the church knew any of this was happening. It appears that when they learned this was happening, they took immediate action by basically forcing this guy to resign. And then the police arrested the guy. I'm not sure if there's a link in between those two or what. Like, I don't know if the church knew that he was going to get arrested, but whatever. They got rid of him at the church, and then he got arrested, and then we found out about what happened. There's no indication anyone at the church knew any of this was going on. So I want to be clear. I don't know that the church did anything wrong, but clearly they were not keeping close enough tabs on this guy. So that's disturbing. And also, this must have happened really quickly because the church's YouTube channel showed this guy preaching as recently as March. So the encounters that he did, apparently happened through April. Well, he was still preaching like a month prior to that. So his downfall happened very quickly. And that takes me back to what they said about why they were shutting down. I want to show you that again because of how disturbing it is now in hindsight, now that you know what I know. Because look at this. Due to the continued effects of the financial situation our church inherited several years ago, don't care, and the impact of the ongoing investigation of a former staff member. Like, how could you downplay what he did that much in this description? And they say former staff member. Like, he was a janitor we hired 10 years ago. No, he was the executive pastor of your church like 3 months ago. And you're not saying his name for reasons. That's such a bad statement in hindsight, right? Like, that's how disturbing this is. And also, they said we're closing because we've lost the ability to remain financially viable. That suggests they would totally stay open if people kept giving them cash. But apparently, after the executive pastor got arrested for what he did to a child, even the donors at the church are like, maybe we shouldn't give you money anymore. And they walked out. And now the church is like, you guys feel bad for us because we have no money anymore. I did want to share with you another thing about this story, which is I don't like the fact that they're closing up shop entirely, because I feel like this means there won't be a long-term reckoning about this. The other church leaders will never be forced to confront what they did or didn't do that allowed at least one kid to be placed in harm's way. I don't know if the kid was involved with the church, if it was like a Sunday school member or something like that, or if this is some other kid that he brought to the church on occasion. But I would like to know that, because that might imply other people had some involvement in this. The church leaders won't have to answer to their own congregation anymore. There's also nothing stopping the leaders at the church from setting up a new church with a new name a couple blocks over after all this, smooths over in time. I will say this church only came into being because the last church in their building, their pastor was caught having an affair with another pastor at the church. That's why the old church had to shut down, and then this church came in, and now this church is shutting down for even worse reasons. So, without a come to Jesus moment, what lessons are they really going to learn? Right now, the only lesson I'm seeing is, I wish we had more money, but we don't, so we'll close up. Like, no one's getting blamed for anything. One thing I found kind of funny in all this is I know the church is scrubbing its websites of any communication with this guy. They took down his sermons. I think their Facebook page is down. I think their YouTube channel has been taken down, even though we preached like a couple of months ago. But there was one website I found hilarious because it was a website. I will show it to you. This is like the website for a church headhunter organization. Like, maybe there's a big church that says we need a pastor, and you don't just put that up on Craigslist or something and say we need a pastor. No, you go to a firm, you give them money, and you say, here's our church. We need you to find our next pastor. And it turns out this is a firm. It's called the Vanderbloemen Search Group. And if you went on their website a while back and you clicked on results, you want to see testimonials of how good they are. There was a testimonial from the Metropolitan Baptist Church. And you could see right above my head here from the senior pastor, William and his team are unbelievably well connected with people in the church and people who know people. This is the only approach to place a key staff member. Like, they're saying, we went out to them. We were looking for a new pastor. They hooked us up. That guy was great. And who is that guy? Well, let's zoom in right here. It's Zach King, student pastor. And what does this Zach King say? Throughout the process, they did an excellent job assessing my strengths and the fit with this church. I've been here for 3 years and couldn't be happier with the team I'm on. I don't know, but I'm just telling you that this headhunter firm says we should take down this page. I don't think we want a stamp of approval from the guy who just got arrested for doing horrible, horrible things. And by the way, now that this is public, that this guy got arrested for doing stuff with kids, I hope this church kind of asks around if this Zach King ever did anything with the kids at their church. Because that's a very disturbing thing. By the way, thank you, Internet Archive, for saving that page. Last thing I'll mention, there was a wonderful column in the Lexington Herald Leader by a columnist named Linda Blackford, who wrote about this because she pointed out that, it's a reminder. This whole story is a reminder that conservative Christians always blame everybody else for being a threat to children. But who's the biggest threat? It's a guy like Zach King. And let me show you what she wrote in her article, because she pointed out Um, she pointed out all the charges about Zach King, and I see this in the comments already. Zach King is facing all these charges. Not a drag queen. No, that was clergy. Yet again, someone, usually a man in a position of power in a church, has once again been accused of abusing their power, their Christianity, and their congregants. Like, yeah, not a drag queen. Drag queens are not what you got to worry about. Gay people, trans people are not the people you got to worry about. Maybe the call is coming from inside the house. So I appreciate Linda Blackford writing that. Um, I I wanted to point out a lot of news reports I read, and even the church itself in that Facebook post, they keep saying King is a former staff member or a former pastor. And that may be technically true because he's no longer working at the church, but it's misleading in a way because he was definitely a pastor when he was allegedly committing these crimes. And by using the word former, it allows the church to distance themselves from this guy. Even though he was there like a couple months ago, you were all hanging out with him. This is not a guy who happened to work at your church 10 years ago and then you fired him and now you just discovered something horrible. No, he was in the office next door to you in your building and he's leading worship sessions every week. Like, no, he's not a former staff member. He's the guy who ran your church like yesterday. You should admit that and then figure out what you need to do to move forward. All right, I'm going to end it there. That was a disturbing story, but I wanted to make sure you heard that one. Any last questions? Hopefully, we're having an impact. If we can teach children to call out bad actors the first time, we may be able to prevent the abuse. I hope so. I hope all these Me Too stories and Church Too stories help people who are still religious realize that it's important for them to come out and speak out against this stuff. And maybe I hope that the kids in those churches realize that their pastors should not be doing certain things to them. Like, pastors do not deserve unearned trust. I hope this has taught these people a lesson. I'm not sure I want to know, but what's the difference between first degree and third degree sodomy and rape? What would make one worse than the other? It's a fair question. If I try to give you an answer, I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong. So I would say Google it, but be careful how you Google that stuff. I don't know what the legal differences are between one degree and another degree. So I'm going to hold off on that question so I don't say something stupid. Zach King looks like a British accountant over 26. Yeah, I mean, he's 47, and those British accountants, they'll get you every time. Thanks for these important and disgusting stories, but could you end on something lighter next time, please? Can I tell you something? I think I was supposed to end on a lighter note, and then I shifted the stories around, so I ended on the saddest possible note, and I apologize. But I will try to give you something uplifting next week. Oh, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Thank you to Den for all of his help this week as well, as always. Thanks to all of you for watching. Remember that you can go to patreon.com to show your support for this channel. I appreciate that a lot. You could subscribe if you haven't already. To friendlyatheist.com. That's free. You'll get those emails from me. And I think that's it. I will see you next Friday at the usual time and place. Have a wonderful, safe weekend. And maybe there will be some interesting news about the Democrats by the time we speak next. All right. Thanks to Den also. All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.